Hey, this is Deborah. Listen, before I dive into this episode, don't get turned off if you're not someone who's chasing an endurance event. So I want to let you know that even if you have no interest in running a marathon or doing an Ironman triathlon, or maybe you have no idea even what I've just said, if you do any kind of cardio exercise beyond 30, 45 minutes, listen to this episode. Take me for a walk. Just let it soak in and over you because I guarantee you there are takeaways here for you on any level that you're at. Even if you're not exercising right now and you're thinking, I need to start, I know I need to start, your temptation most likely will be to default to that habit gravity that you remember you learned 30, 40 years ago if you're in your 50s or 60s, that it was steady state exercise, that moderate exercise, right? Well, listen, folks, I got information for you that you may want to use here. 1980s called and wants that back. Moderate exercise is actually not the best ticket for you. Certainly not right now. All right. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address top struggles and concerns for women who are in midlife, menopause, and beyond, so that you can have the energy, vitality that you want, need, and deserve. What we do here is cover what to eat now, how to move now, and mindset changes that will help you make those shifts that I'm talking about. All right, what are you waiting for? Let's dive into this episode and start flipping 50 together. This is really my story, so indulge me for a little bit. It is my story that I believe will give you nuggets and takeaways. So, what I'm doing here is sharing my story and the science behind it. Now, if you've been listening to me for a while, you know my original story, the origin of Flipping 50, where it came from, why it was born. And if you just heard that, that was me swatting at a mosquito. Sorry. You're really with me here. Okay. All right. Flipping 50 was born because at 49, I quit. I left the safety and security of not only university, we're talking government, very solid paycheck, TIAA, CREF fund, pension, things to look forward to. And I left the safety and security and flexibility of a work for a private fitness facility where I could earn as much as I could earn based on the performance of my department. And I loved it. I didn't leave any job ever because I didn't love it. I had to leave because things got squeezed out. There's only so much time, and I had to choose where can I have the biggest impact? Where can we have the biggest reach? And where can I have the flexibility and freedom to do what I want to do and be there for my son and my family? And you too are making those decisions, I'm sure, all of the time. But this story that I'm talking to you about today is about my training for an Ironman. Well into 6 years into building Flipping 50 and the work that I do with trainers at Fitness Marketing Mastery. So if you're a trainer or a health coach and you're here watching, wondering about yourself, most likely, as well as about women in midlife, you probably should be over there. Let me help you have a strong comeback or dig in deeper if you're already having a little success this year. We need to do what we can, all of us collectively, for the fitness industry this year. Okay, so indulge me, but realize the reason I'm telling you is so you can benefit. All right, this is all about endurance exercise, whether doing endurance exercise, period, or doing endurance types of events. So definitely we could categorize marathons, ultra distance marathons, and that means beyond 26.2 miles. That could mean 30 miles, could also mean 50 miles, could mean 100 miles. And we're talking endurance events like triathlon. But when we get to starting to do even Olympic distance, which is maybe, 3 hour long event, that's pretty long, right? I think we could both agree half Ironman would be significantly longer. And of course, I'm talking about, for you and me, for normal humans. And pros are going to finish a lot faster than that. Elite age group athletes are going to finish longer than that. But when we talk about Ironman triathlon or ultra marathons or even marathons. We're talking 5, 6, 7 hours for some. For Ironman distance triathlons, they give you up to 17 hours to finish. That's a pretty significant endurance event. And not only do you have, this is the event, how long it's going to take, but you've done that kind of training leading up to it. 2 hours and 3 hour kind of runs, 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 hour bike rides, swims that last an hour, hour and a half, depending on who you are. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and your hourly exercise over the course of a week might start at 9 or 10, get to 13, but ultimately at peak, you may be exercising for 15 or 20 hours a week. So let's talk about your, 30 minutes 3 to 5 times a week and how that compares. But if you're not that person and you're tempted to do an hour every time you do that cardio, listen up, because this is for you too. And it's relative. I don't know what would feel like endurance or long exercise sessions to you, but your next leap affects your hormones relatively similarly to long endurance events to somebody who's used to doing them. All right. Why and how even modifying your training may cause weight gain. We're going to dive into all of it and decide for you if endurance exercise during menopause is a friend or a foe, and how it could be both depending on what phase you're in. What you need to consider is that exercise is stress. Exercise, if you're just going outside and you're going for a 30-minute walk, is stress, meaning very adequate, proportionally, this is what you're supposed to do, exercise is still stress on the body. We're on purpose adding more stress than just functioning inside of your house, going about your daily activities of life. Taking you for a walk is a little bit more cardiovascular stress than that. Going to the gym 2 or 3 times a week to do your strength training, as it should be done with a proper exercise prescription, is stress to your body. We call it overload. It's a principle of this is how you get the muscles stronger in the recovery period between the strength training exercise. But exercise is stress. So it's important to consider, where does exercise become a problem, and why and where does it become a problem for women in menopause? We have to consider stressors in life, all of them. It's an allostatic load. Yesterday, I was presenting to a fitness conference, a group of fitness professionals who are personal trainers, fitness instructors, health coaches, and or want to be health coaches for women in midlife, talking about the illustration mentally of if you're wearing a backpack right now, and every stressor you have in life is like another brick going into that backpack. And it's like one coming from your emotional stressors. But imagine this. I was in a moment in my life in 2019. This was pre pandemic. We weren't, at least I wasn't, thinking about it at all. Wasn't on the radar. Didn't know it was coming, right? So we were at this moment in life where it was just a normal moment in life as we knew it then. But I had been exposed to mold just before Christmas in 2018. So, right before the turn of the new year, septic tank backed up in the basement of the home I was renting in the mountains, which is an important part of the story in Boulder, Colorado. Because on a Sunday, 2 days before Christmas, is not a good time to choose if you were going to, a plumbing problem. And definitely not if you live at 8,800 feet, because there's a rather steep hill to get up for any plumbing trucks that would come to do the mitigation. And when you've got that issue going on a Sunday before Christmas and you were supposed to host 14 people at your home, suddenly plans changed. And so you get the idea. I already had two people who are guests downstairs in my home who fortunately probably alerted me to the problem faster than I would have. So things could have been worse. Fortunately, they weren't. But I got to know my son's girlfriend really well because she wet vacked. I'm like, she's in. Yeah. And she's a keeper. All right. So we've got that going on. And because it was 2 days before Christmas, as you might imagine, someone came out, but not until after Christmas. And then there was a delay because they want the insurance to look at it first before there's any work done to determine if it will be covered. That kind of delay and sub zero temperatures and snow and ice prevented things from happening very quickly. And things happened like that for about 3 months. They're scheduled to come. Oh, but they can't. The truck can't make it up the hill. Okay, delay some more, delay some more. Meanwhile, I'm exposed living in this house to mold as it's soaked up through the walls and the sheetrock, right? For months. You get the picture, and I won't go on. Now, so the mold exposure number one, I'm continually exposed during the construction, the mitigation that went on and wasn't put back together. All my belongings were outside. Fortunately, it was freezing. So, whether there was moisture outside because of the snow or not, hopefully it wasn't so bad, right? So, my things were put back in about 3 months. But I was exposed to mold for about 5.5 because what I discovered is after a period of about 8 weeks where I continued to get sick after the mitigation was supposedly done, I said, look, I'm testing this again to find out if it's this because I don't get sick. This is not like me. I might not have had sickness or illness like this in 5 years, let alone in 8 weeks. So, sure enough, there was mold. The landlord said, no, I'm done. I've spent enough money not doing anything more. I think you need to move. So my lease was up in 6 weeks. This did not give me a lot of time, but I had a sudden move. So in 5 to 6 weeks, I had to decide, yes, I'm moving. That didn't take very long. I had to search, finally find something, signed a new home out of state. So living in Boulder at the time, I moved to Scottsdale. A little fluke. Not going to tell you why all that happened. We don't need to go into it. But at the same time, I was planning and preparing to host a retreat for Flipping 50 community members. So I had 10 to 12, I don't remember the number, members coming to Boulder, not to stay with me. And of course, we weren't going to use my house anymore. That was no longer a part of the plan because I was in the middle of boxes in the middle of every room in my house, beginning to pack up things that I wasn't using on a day to day basis. So, the prep for the retreat, the move suddenly that I didn't want to make in the first place. So, all tied with emotion. The timing of all of this was terrible. So, clearly, because I was hosting this retreat, I couldn't move as quickly as I needed to, wanted to. And my new landlord wanted me to. I got her to defer for another 2 weeks. And here's how it all went down. So I had people coming in. I had a young college girl come in and help me for 2 or 3 hour time blocks to wrap up dishes, pack up boxes, mark the boxes that were going to be packed up by someone else to put on a truck. I had to go find the rental truck. Meanwhile, was making numerous trips to the U-Haul store for boxes for tape and everything else that I needed. The timing of the event happened. I had people coming in on Thursday afternoon. First part of the event was Thursday evening. The event concluded and included a lot of hiking long distances, me hosting dinners later that day, meeting one-on-one with people between, and ended at 12:30 on a Saturday down in Boulder. I hightailed it home. I believe at the moment I picked up some boxes or something at the U-Haul store on my way home. I was home by 1 to meet the U-Haul loaders. So the guys who were coming to load it. The U-Haul had been brought to my house by a brother who happened to be in town, sitting there waiting for them. And they called and were going to be 2 hours late. So they had misjudged or gotten, wait, dude, did I still want them to come? I'm like, yes, because my plan was that's the last night I'm staying there. I'm leaving at 6 a.m. in the morning to drive to Scottsdale with my dog and my car loaded, ready to go. And like, I have no choice. Yes, I told her I'd be out. So I'd been packing to move for 3 weeks leading up to the planning and the hosting of this event. You get the idea. Also, I might mention this is June of 2019. That was about the moment, literally the moment I hit menopause. And now, if you've been listening for any length of time, you know I speak about the last couple of years of perimenopause, first couple of postmenopause. We are subject to rapid loss of muscle, rapid loss of bone. That's when our estrogen is really tanking and cortisol really spikes. Not a great time to be under additional stressors. However, for a lot of women, this is how it happens. We're in midlife. We've got aging parents. We have things going on. We have young children. You may have experienced all of that in the middle of a pandemic with major changes you had no control over, similar to my experience. So, liken yourself to this and put yourself in the same instance. All right. So, I had some business financial leveraging issues happening at the time. Now, part of it because of good problems, so good growth, had to move things from here to there, but I was in a pickle. Shall we just say that? I don't use that word very often. I probably, if my son hears this, he'll probably say, never ever say that again. But I really was financially strapped in my business. It was starting to happen. I was aware of it at this point, and that's just kind of a ripple effect in the background happening. So this will become more relevant. So the event gets over. I do move. I really like the environment I'm in. I'm trying to forget the cost and the expense of the move and the mitigation and the landlord then holding on to a chunk of my deposit, which angered me. But I also had to let that go and let go the fact that I was not going to take her to court because of the problem caused by lack of maintenance on their part. However, right, you have to decide, am I going in on this or am I going to let this go? And if you do, you really have to let it go. But I was also having some personal relationship develop some major friction and didn't have support, the support I really needed right there at the moment. And it bubbled up because of the move and when that all happened. Okay, so fast forward, it's fall, and I'm living in this new environment, loving it really, love sunshine, love warmth. Okay, this is working. And I'm training for an iron distance triathlon. Didn't mention that because I hadn't planned to have the septic tank back up. Just a few weeks prior to that, I've said I'm in November 2019. I'm going to do an Ironman. I've done them before. I know it's not ideal for hormone balance, but you cannot remove the joy factor from someone's life. And this is something I really love. I know how to manipulate. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I've been a marathon training coach. I'm a medical exercise specialist, and I'm an endocrinology and exercise expert for women in menopause. And I know how to alter training schedules so they are not the volume after volume after volume that normal training programs are. I manipulate strategically. This will also come into play. It worked favorably for me up until this point 3 times. So I trained for 4 other Ironman, did fine, but I wasn't really experiencing many symptoms of perimenopause that many women are, and know how to maintain my muscle and lean mass during training. So I had taken the training schedule, added to it strength training. So I was never spending tons of time in an unloaded way that would increase muscle loss or bone density loss. Always maintained my body composition, maintained my lean muscle mass, and recovered very well because of it with very few injuries. But the last one here will be paramount to what's happening in this. Now, it's now late in the fall, the end of September, the very end of September. I start submitting applications for TEDx talks. And early October, I'm accepted within 3 days of submitting applications because of my topic, I believe. Women in menopause, or everything women in menopause learned about exercise may be a lie. I'm accepted within the Thursday night to Saturday morning, so less than 3 days. But I have 3 weeks to prepare. So remember, I'm going through a very stressful time, exposed to mold, financial changes and challenges that are getting more imminent. I'm getting more panicky all the time. A lot of anxiety I've never experienced before. I am just recently post-menopause. Our relationship is not going well at all. I'm training for an Ironman distance triathlon. Now imagine if going for a 30-minute walk, what it's like to go for a 5-hour bike ride or a 3-hour run does to your body. Yes, you get the picture. Lots of little stressors, big stressors as well, adding up. So as I was accepted to the TEDx talk, I had 3 weeks to prepare for it. It was going to occur the first week of November. Okay, no problem. That is a week and a half after a conference I was already committed to needing to be at. And it was going to be traveling to about as far away as I could possibly get in the continental US, from Scottsdale to Reading, Pennsylvania. And it was going to occur on a weekend, and weekends are crucial for people who run a business, for instance, have to work and need their weekends for training in preparation. So that was 2 weekends out. The conference I already had to attend and was committed to, and the weekend going to Pennsylvania. Stressors again in the back of my mind, like, okay, how am I going to make this happen? Where does this bunny come out of the hat? And that was 2 weeks prior to my leaving for an out of the country Ironman, where there's a logistics involved in sending your bike, arriving on time at the right place, having the ride pick you up because you don't really speak the language very well. You're getting the idea. Now I was waiting for, searching for, applying for loans for my business meanwhile during the weeks leading up to this because it was getting a little tight and a little nerve wracking. And pretty soon my business and some channels were going to be shut down. Problem. That'll be a problem for anybody, right? So here's what happened. I did the TEDx talk, by the way, but the entire weekend, if you've ever felt like your hair standing on end because you're that tight, you're that tense, that was me the entire weekend. I was chosen to be the home run hitter, if you will. So out of 5 speakers, I was the fifth, which is a very honored spot to be in because bases are loaded. People have been sitting there in their chairs waiting and watching this event for a couple of hours at this point. You want a strong person at the end. I got to be that person, but what it meant is that day of the event, after all of the exhaustion leading up to anywhere else, finally arriving, I was there in place, had to look good, be the part, do all the testing of microphones, stand on stage. By about 8:30 in the morning, prepared for going on stage, but I didn't get to go on stage because I was last until 5:30 p.m. So talk about standing at the free throw line with the most anxiety you've ever had in your life because this is a pivotal event. It really means a lot. I was excited to be there. It was a good stressor, but it was compounded by so many bad stressors. I mean, do you get the feeling that I had? I could literally feel what it feels like to have anxiety every day. And I've never experienced that before in my life. I'm flying to the event. So you have to back up maybe just a few hours from it. I'm flying to the event, and in transferring planes in Houston, the loan from the bank comes in It's in my account. I need desperately to change and transfer that money to pay a bill that is keeping me from, I'm not advertising, I'm shut down, I can't do anything right now. And it's been that way for 2 days. So I have 5 minutes transferring planes before they're calling my number, my group, right? I have to get in line and board. I open up my computer, I get on to, thank goodness, right, the free internet in the airport. I transfer the money, pay the bill, I'm back in business. Now I can't do a lot else because I'm boarding, but I needed to do that before I got to Mexico, where I had no idea, will I have quality internet? Will I do that? Will this mess things up? Okay, so you get the idea. Now, not only that, but I'm then arriving at an Ironman, not speaking the native language, and thinking about the stress of that endurance event, the emotional stress also of an endurance event, and the Ironman itself. If you've ever seen people cross the finish line of an Ironman, and I mean age groupers, not so much the pros, it's an emotional event. So there's lots of happiness, but there are simultaneously lots of tears because it means so much. You've sacrificed so much, some time with people that you love. You put so much and poured so much of yourself into it. But doing all of that amidst running a life, running a business full of travel at that time, we were still doing it. I have two arms to my business and juggling it all. So I want to point out to you what happened, because many people will think, well, endurance exercise, you're going to be so lean and so fit and so skinny. Okay, here's how it doesn't happen. Unlike other training events, where as a strength and conditioning coach, I've mentioned menopause fitness expert, the creator of the first and only exclusively made for menopause fitness membership in the world. I know better, right? The Flipping 50 fitness specialist. I manipulated my own training for 3 Ironman before this with fantastic results. No injuries, no illness, rapid recovery, felt great, crossed the finish line with a smile. And listen, there is suffering in an up to 17-hour event. I promise you there is. But, you know, generally in every event, I am so thrilled to be there. I feel so alive that I have a smile on my face the majority of the time, even when it's not going well, because you will run into your own demons. Your mind will tell you to stop. You're tired. Your feet hurt. You have a blister on top of a blister. And why didn't you bring another pair of socks? And you're thinking, I have nothing to prove. Here I am. I've done this before. Why would I ever need to do this again? I can quit. I can go get a good night's sleep. But you don't. And you battle with your mind, your own demons, not with anybody else. But it's a huge moment of growth. As a trainer, triathlon coach, I have a system of reducing the overall volume, enhancing recovery, and manipulating traditional schedules for Ironman training that are founded in, most of the traditional training are founded in tons of volume. Just, starting from riding your bike for an hour and a half to 2 hours to 3 hours to 3.5 to 4 to 4.5 to 5. And that's how it works over the period of weeks. And you're doing similarly with your running and with your swimming. And it's just a volume, blah, 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 right? Not a great formula for hormone balance, by the way. But what I do is strategically alter and leverage workouts with the timing of them so that I can reduce the volume by at least a third and make sure that recovery and maintenance of muscle and bone density during training is as much a part of the training as the training endurance work itself. The why on that, why is that so important? Number one, women in midlife are at risk for rapidly losing muscle and bone density due to estrogen's rapid decline in that end of perimenopause phase, beginning of postmenopause. And I was right there, right? No denying that. The unloaded exercise that happens specifically in a triathlon event where you're on a bike and you're swimming a great proportion of the time, And that's called unloaded. So if you'll remember back when Lance Armstrong got osteoporosis, low bone density. Why? Because he trains on a bike all the time. There is no heel strike, there is no impact in his training. And that can happen to you too. It illustrates a point that when it happens to men who are highly fit, even though they have a lot of strength and power, it can still happen to them. But it can also happen to runners. Just because you run longer distance, you don't get more bone density benefit from 10 miles than you did from 2. Okay. But the third reason why it's so important to manipulate that schedule is endurance activity at that level, for sure, is known to contribute to muscle breakdown and muscle wasting in older adults. Look at older adults closely who are doing more than, say, half marathon distances, doing Ironman distances and marathons. Look at them. Look at their skin. Look at their muscle. You may think first, oh, I really like that. They're thinner, right? Overall, but they may not necessarily be more fit for longevity because of the aging and accelerated oxidation that occurs with all of that exercise. So, without mitigation of strength training and manipulation of the schedule that I've talked about, they can accelerate their aging very easily. All right, but even during carefully planned and care about what I was doing, an experienced triathlete, hello, with 35 years of strength and conditioning exercise experience, a top endocrinology and exercise expert, I could not negate the weight of so many negative stressors right then in that year. Can you train for an endurance event, even in Ironman, in midlife successfully? Yes. As long as you carefully plan and follow a training regime, as well as have a life circumstance that encourages recovery. What do I mean by that? Low emotional stressors. So, low emotional and mental stressors. Time to physically recover, meaning you have a rest between your workouts, you eat properly, and you can sleep adequately. You're not making up for, oh, I've got to work because I did, 5 hours of training today. So I'm going to work late into the night or early into the morning. You can't afford to do that. You've got to have the sleep. Few environmental stressors. By that, anything that would disrupt your hormones. So, reduced exposure to plastics and processed foods, but also making sure that you're not putting on lotions or using shampoos or using makeup or using other things that will have a hormonal disruption result on your body. And in my case, it was mold. Couldn't control that. You may have mold in your home and not know it. You may have lots of dust. Maybe you don't clean as diligently and nobody else does it as well. Upholstery in your house, your bedding. There's so many things that could be disruptors for you. Your exercise stress is going to increase dramatically if you're doing an endurance event. Even with planned and calculated schedule, you have to be able to say, as my training hours increase, do I have the corresponding support for the recovery? And if simultaneously you lose bandwidth elsewhere, financial resources, potentially, relationships, you will be in trouble. But here's what you do need. If you can look at, okay, I've got this, you have no issue. Financial resources are there. You've got relationships around you that support what you're doing. Your hormone status takes a rapid change. If you have your environmental stressors increase, you may reach your tipping point and not be able to sustain good health training and the strength and the power and the goals that you've actually got that you think are supporting you. All right. So next piece, what can happen, right? If you've got all these things adding up against you, illness, injury, that's very typical of people who are training for endurance events, either after it, the letdown, generally you've got this, you can rally and you can get there, but maybe you're injured during or after because it's breakdown. Maybe micronutrients are missing, the rest of recovery isn't there, you're training too much without the time between. And last, weight gain. And then ultimately weight loss resistance. And that's what happened to me. So once I was out of the mold, I didn't get sick. I didn't get sick during training. I didn't get sick after training. And I wasn't injured. I'm careful. I'm safe. I know what I'm doing. I know when to back off. I don't experience any injury. But what I did experience was weight gain and then weight loss resistance. What I mean by that is not only did I gain 10 and actually a little bit more pound during, but it was right at about 10 pounds. I gained 10 pounds cortisol weight. I know I had a friend, and I test regularly. I test my hormones before training and after training. I test and watch and observe my body composition, meaning I'm watching what happens with the percent, but also the pounds of muscle that I have right now. Am I staying the same? Am I gaining or am I losing? If I'm losing muscle mass, something's wrong and I'm going to change it right away because we can't afford to have that happen. And body composition, for me, when I've trained for 8 different Ironman triathlons, my body composition doesn't change all that much. If you're at a healthy weight, your endurance event is not probably going to reduce your body fat percent. Endurance is not the way to do it, ladies. It's absolutely not. You have so many better ways to do it. So if you're thinking, "Oh gosh, I wish I could do that. I would be so lean and fit," you probably wouldn't. You'd probably gain weight because you cannot be anorexic and an athlete. You've got to eat. You've got to have much more muscle. You've got to have much more protein to sustain, and you're going to eat carbohydrates. So there is no diet mentality that fits when you're an intentional athlete like this. So weight gain, but then I had weight loss resistance. Why? Because I'd stressed my body so long. So starting almost or over a year ago, I began to commit to the Ironman. Then I had the mold exposure begin. And as soon as that mold is there, doesn't take very long. Within 72 hours, if that's not mitigated, and unfortunately at my house, it was not, that causes a problem. You're exposed. And it was upstairs, downstairs, right? I was living upstairs, but I had to come in that downstairs door. I had to haul my groceries in. I had to bring my dog in and out of that door. And so constantly I was opening it up, closing it up. The block, the zipper, the plastic zipper was held by duct tape, but it was freezing. It was winter, so it would fall down constantly. I was still exposed. Those things become problematic, right? And then it was just a mounting. Added this stressor, add this stressor, add this stressor, and this one, and this one, and this one. You've got a problem, right? So if you get in the same situation, how did I solve the weight loss resistance? Well, it's now, as I record this, it's about 18, 19 months after that Ironman. Almost, well, I take that back. It's now, I feel like I've lost a year during the pandemic. Do you too? I'm having a real struggle doing this. I did it last week with someone else as well. But in November, so I'm recording this in the middle of September. In November, 2 more months, it will have been almost 2 years. So 22 months, I really haven't run. I haven't gone for a run, not for 45 minutes, not for an hour, not certainly for 3 hours, and not for a marathon distance activity, which is what I trained for at the end of a Ironman triathlon. That's what you do. Swim 2.4 miles, ride 112 miles on your bike. Then you get off the bike and you run or walk or combination or crawl because you're going to finish 26.2 miles, right? A little stress. Yep. Even one of those by itself is stress. You string them all together and you're going to raise that cortisol, baby. And you're going to keep it up. And that was the problem for me. So it wasn't just, okay, remove the stress. I'm no longer training. Please fall off. Wait. Well, no, it didn't happen like that. It took a while. I had to get some additional support. So I had to add some detox. I had to get more consistent and regular in using my infrared sauna again, even though I wasn't exposed to mold and it wasn't for that. So I have a home infrared sauna, and I'll put the link to the one that I use. It's a solo. Thank goodness I purchased it So it's not only it helped with mold mitigation, but it helps with recovery from exercise. It's also helpful for your skin and improving the way you age. So many reasons to get it. I love it and used it regularly, but I had to do that. I also eventually had to get some support. So, having done every lifestyle change that I would give any client, and it still was not quite enough, then you ask for help to go the rest of the distance. That's, I think, the appropriate place to say, I'm not going to be able to do this alone. I'm going to do bioidentical hormone replacement. And that's when I reach for it. And it's very important. I think it's, whether you do a cream or you do injections or you do something sublingual. I'm not a fan of pellets myself, but because it's too slow to adjust. And 90% of the women who I know have used it don't get great results with it because you're stuck with it. And if it's a wrong prescription for you, it doesn't work for as long as you're there with that prescription. So whatever means you do, though, it's not supposed to do all the work for you. If you have made the lifestyle changes and continue to do that, you're helping the BHRT have to probably be taken in lower dosages, helping it work better with you and help support your balance. So, whether you do or you don't, personal choice for all of us. For some women, lifestyle changes may be enough. For others, not so much. And you may be committed to, I'm not using that for whatever reasons. Your own in depth research on science and the new information put out there still may not be enough to make you feel like that's something you want to do. And maybe it's an affordability issue, and that's okay. You can get yourself as close as possible to your game ready state. But if you are like me, and you love endurance exercise, be prepared to manipulate and be prepared to look at the signs and the symptoms that are happening to you at the time. Had I been wiser, potentially I would have backed out of that Ironman. And it's a hard thing to do when you really love it, you're committed to it, and you remember the memories of having participated in the camaraderie and community of people who you're friendly with in triathlon. I didn't want to quit it, didn't want to give it up because it was actually keeping me going with the other stressors in some odd way. But that probably would have stopped me tipping the scale in the wrong direction had I changed, where I was feeling this isn't right. In August, I knew my training wasn't having the right effect on me because I was experiencing the weight gain already. I wasn't feeling myself. But if you don't have that and you love endurance and you're still pulled to it, I'll tell you in just one moment what to do. But after 22 months of not running, I'm definitely doing interval training, but that's a 20 to 30, I'll say, minute stint on the treadmill where I'm warming up. I'm doing high intensity interval training for 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes and then cooling down. That's been the extent. 2 and rarely 3 times a week, but usually just 2. Um, and then swimming, but we're talking swimming for 30 minutes or 45 minutes to enjoy it, not to follow a training plan, and walking. Really, that's been the majority, in addition to strength training, of my exercise. So I've lost about 14 pounds total from the point where I didn't peak in the weight gain at the point at the end of the triathlon. I actually peaked a little bit later because it took a while for me to reroute, and what I was trying to do wasn't working. So, really, it'd been about 14 pounds up. A lot of women in our community say, I can't even imagine you 14 pounds overweight. And you can hide it. It's far better. Even at 5'4", you can hide that because you're distributing the weight evenly and elsewhere. But, of course, it was midsection, it was belly, and it was just overall. You couldn't potentially see it, but I could. I could go into my closet and see it. Like, I can't put these on. And that sometimes is going to be something where maybe you embrace it. But for me, I knew I couldn't because it wasn't just about the clothes not fitting. It was that I didn't feel myself, didn't feel great. Not because when I looked in the mirror or put my hands on my hips and felt like, okay, that's bigger around than it should be. But there was just, I didn't feel good. And that's what you want to pay attention to. And so it took a while, but what made it happen and turn the corner was doing less, far less. And then just over time, eating the same way, eating wisely, smartly, lots of protein, lots of micronutrient dense foods, not cutting back, right? Yes. Portion control, eating at the right time, not trying to do some drastic thing and doing it every day where you would lose metabolic flexibility. If you starve, you eat the same way every single day, whether it's starving or eating right or whatever program you're on, the same way every day, like exercising the same way all the time, those will lose effectiveness and you will actually be gaining weight. You'll lose metabolic flexibility, which means you slow down your metabolism. Over time, that's not a good strategy. So here's what to do for you endurance lovers, right? Go after uh, or a training program and a schedule, but alter it. So use a training program and strategy. If you want to do a marathon, a half marathon, or maybe a 10K feels like endurance for you right now, go after that schedule, get it, and then manipulate it. If you don't know how to, start working with a coach who does. And a coach is not just a health coach, but somebody who understands exercise physiology, kinesiology, and endocrinology. Ideally, look for Flipping 50 Fitness specialist. Monitor your hormone levels. So I always pre-test. If I know I'm going to do some kind of training, I will pre-test. And usually at the end of, say, an Ironman training, within a week after I come back, I'm post-testing because I want to know what are my statistics? Where am I at here? You want to monitor your recovery rate, as I do. So I monitor my resting heart rate every morning. So if you have a shift in the elevation of that 5 beats or more from where you are average, that tells you you're not recovering very well. You can also invest in a heart rate variability monitor. So it's a chest strap that looks very much like a heart rate strap you would do for heart rate testing, but you're applying it to an app. Heart rate variability refers to between heartbeats. So we're not just looking at you have 60 beats per minute, say at rest, but your variability between beats. And the more variability we have between our beats or heartbeats, the better. So you get a score. So ideally, you're looking at it, you'll probably be seeing these readings that if you're 85% or greater, your 85 number for HRV is like, yes, go for it. You're ready for the workout you had scheduled today. But if your variability is at like 60, it's going to say you're actually not ready for a tough workout, do a recovery workout today. And then you can manipulate the schedule you have on the fly to better suit you without throwing yourself under the bus. You can also look at your exercise heart rate. So all of these pieces of data are helpful. If your exercise heart rate, for instance, doing a similar kind of workout is higher than it normally is, that's a sign. Or if it won't elevate, that's another sign you're overtraining. And it's relative to you, not to anybody else. Monitor your body weight and your body composition to avoid muscle loss. So throughout, you want to make sure you're looking at not just your weight, but you have to know how much fat and how much muscle do you have. Make sure that you're strength training to muscular fatigue. And a lot of people will shy away from it when they're endurance training and saying, you should be pouring the majority of your energy into your sport. Truth. But if you're talking endurance training of this type, that is part of the manipulation that I do for schedules. So we increase and we do a higher percent of strength training than most traditional programs would do. And because we do it, when we put it in the schedule, we can do less volume of the kind of cortisol increasing, which has negative results on your overall hormone balance types of exercise. We don't have to do the same volume. Create strong boundaries for yourself, physically and mentally, with those people that you love and with your own jobs, with your own work, with your how am I going to eat, and or is somebody else going to prepare my food so that you've got it there for yourself. Create a community of supportive, and it's got to be supportive people that are positive, not just not negative. You need people in your household who are rallying for you, watching out for you, not who agree just to let you do it, because that in itself is actually negative. Make sure your financial obligations of the training doing something like a marathon unless it's in your backyard, there's travel to get there. There are shoes, there are socks, there are things that you will invest in that you maybe hadn't thought about. How much is this going to cost me, right? It's just running. Well, no, not so much. And if you have, a bike, you have to tune it up. You have to tune it up again before you go. You're going to have to get it there and ship it and either pay for a seat for it or put it in cargo or have somebody else get it there. There's hotel, there's flights, there's a lot of things that you may not have considered that are costly. So make sure that it's not going to put you out, that you can afford the nutrition you need, the recovery support in terms of massage or cryotherapy or just time to do those ice baths yourself, the infrared saunas, the more sleep. And then you handle all those things. Then I say go for it if you're drawn to it and experience the joy that you probably believe that you get from those things when you do them. So be smart, train smart, but know that there are a lot of things to consider when you're considering endurance exercise relative to you. Okay, listener, I'd love to have your input. This has been a long walk, long hike, maybe two hikes, depending if you're used to traditionally. We go about half as long as this, but I'd love to have your input on the combination here that I've shared of the science, but as it relates to my personal story and whether that was valuable or not, to hear it and listen to it. And, there is no admission of guilt here on my part. So I'm human, just like you. And, had I not done that, we wouldn't have another piece of evidence that, I did fine training for 7 Ironman distance triathlons. No weight gain, no injuries, no illness. Outside of the very first one, it was during the race. It wasn't because of training or overtraining. It was because of freaking cold water that I swam in and a plantar muscle tear in my foot because my foot was like ice cold getting out of the water. But other than that, no injuries to speak of. And that was the very first triathlon, by the way, proof that your body can heal. So 7 triathlons later, Ironman triathlons, no issues with that foot. I healed it very well and haven't ever heard from it. I still take care of it just in case, because any injury is going to be a weak link for you, potentially, for years to come. But it can be a source of strength if you pay attention to it. Love to hear from you in the comments. And you can go and find that at flipping50.com/endurance exercise. And what are you waiting for? The world needs you now more than ever, as you are an influencer of 3 generations. So what are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 today.